In this lesson, we are going to learn about one of the most popular frameworks to implement Agile mindset called Scrum. To understand the basic idea behind Scrum, let's put Scrum next to a waterfall method. So Scrum works on this 1 to 4 week sprint where you take part of your product and you define, you design, you build, and you test. And then you show your product to your stakeholders and see if we need to adjust your product or if you need to do something different. And then you repeat the cycle again and again. And so this way you are building your product incrementally after every sprint, and then at the end you get all of your product. In a waterfall method, when you do the requirement phase, you get a requirement documents at the end of it. And then you have your design phase, at the end of which you get some of high-level design or low-level design documents, so you have some more design documents. And then you do your implementation verification, and then you do your deployment, and so finally you get your finished product. So as you can see, in the waterfall method, there is one big batch, and then you get your final product, whereas in Scrum, after every 2 or between 1 to 4 weeks, you get something finished product, and then you just keep on adding to your existing product until you get your final product. So now that we know the basic idea behind Scrum, let's dig deeper into what happens inside each of these 1 to 4 week sprints. So let's take an example of a company who wants to build a job website, let's say like monster.com, and they want to use a Scrum framework. There are 3 roles that are defined in Scrum. First one is product owner, who defines what needs to be done and in what order. And then there is a Scrum Master that helps the team stay true to the Scrum values and principles. And then you will also notice that Scrum Master helps facilitate most of the meetings in the team. And then if there is any roadblocks, then he'll be the one who will drive the resolution of some of these roadblocks. And then of course there is the team that is self-organizing, and they do most of the building of the software, and it includes the developers and testers and everyone. So let's see how the job website will be created using a Scrum framework. So product owner is going to talk to the executives, the team, the stakeholders, clients, users, and will try to define what exactly need to be built. And then so that will create something called a product backlog, which is basically a list of user stories which are prioritized and defines what need to be done. Now, the product backlog is very different than a typical requirements document. As you will see that it's basically at very high level, and it can change over time. So very high level, in this case, it might mean that the first item may say, post a job. So a company admin can post a job, or a job seeker can apply for a job. So those, at that level, the backlog is defined. So once the team is ready to sprint, they get together for a meeting called sprint planning meeting, where the whole team gets together and then they pick the top stories that they can work on in the existing sprint. And the product owner reviews those stories with the team and helps answer any questions or clarifies anything that is not clear. And then the team gets together again and then do a tasking out of the stories, which means like what exactly we need to do to build the software. So in this case, they may say, well, I need to design this database, I need to fill some data, test data in the database, I need to create this UI screen, and yada, yada, yada. So once the team has looked at the stories and they have tasked it out and they know that they can finish it in the next sprint or the existing sprint, then they will commit to the stories and say that, okay, we'll finish it in this sprint. And then that starts their execution. And that starts this sprint where everybody is working to implement the software. And during that sprint, the whole team gets together for a daily stand-up, in which everybody talks about what they did yesterday, what are they going to do today, and if there are any roadblocks. So in this case, a database person may say, well, I designed or created the tables yesterday in the database, and then today I'm going to populate it with some test data, and if anybody out there who can help me, that'll be awesome. And then he may also say that I don't have the permission of certain things in the database, and unless I have that permission, I won't be able to finish my job. So then somebody might help him, like, who do I contact and what do I do to get access to that? And so this thing continues for the rest of the days in the sprint. But at the end of the sprint, you end up having your finished product. In this case, it'll be posting a job and then applying for a job. So let's say those were the two stories that were picked. So those two stories will be done at the end of the sprint. There are two other meetings that happen at the end of the sprint. The first one is called the sprint review, where the whole team gets together with the stakeholders, with the client, and demonstrate the work that they have done and get the feedback. So in that meeting, the stakeholders may say, well, I have additional idea, I think we should do that also. Or they may say that let's tweak some of this functionality. The second meeting that happens at the end of the sprint is called a sprint retrospectives, where they talk about the process and not about the product. So they talk about, like, how can we do better? So in this case, they talk about what went well in the last sprint, what didn't go well in the last sprint, and how we can do better. So an example would be, well, nobody comes on time for the stand-up, and that results in not everybody get a chance to talk. So as an action item, we'll send a reminder like 5 minutes before the stand-up so that everybody can show up on time and we can finish the stand-up and everybody gets a chance to talk. To keep track of the sprint, like, are we going to achieve our goal for the sprint, team uses something called a burn down or a burn up chart, which shows the amount of work left over the days of the sprint. So at any given day, they can say, oh, are we going to make it or are we not going to make it? And if they need to focus or need additional help. So that's it. That's the main key things about Scrum. So let's pause for a minute and see how Scrum actually supports Agile principles. As you can see, we are building iteratively, so it embraces change. After every sprint, you can make changes to your product backlog and shift your product to a different direction. It also supports a lot of meetings for collaboration, a lot of opportunities, I would say, for collaboration between the team members, with the clients. And then it also supports continuous improvement with a sprint retrospective. And there are many other things. But as we can see that it at least embodies the key principles of Agile. To summarize, there are 3 roles in Scrum: Scrum Master, the team, and the product owner. There are a couple rituals like sprint planning meeting, daily Scrum meeting, sprint review, and a sprint retrospective. And there are some artifacts like product backlog, sprint backlog, and burn down chart.